Hi everyone, my name is Jen and this is Bee's House of Plants, where you talk about all things houseplant and home design. Welcome back. So excited for today's episode of the Houseplant Alphabet. This is a series where I introduce you to some of my houseplants. We talk about my experience growing them, what conditions they are currently in my home. My usual disclaimer, not a plant expert. This is not a definitive care guide. This is just my experience. But before we delve into today's plant, I was reading some of the comments from yesterday's video, and I didn't really quite realize how many new people we have. So hi everyone, if you're new here, hit that subscribe button. Welcome. I do have a video when I installed these plant shelves. It was like way back in March. It is a doozy. If you haven't seen it, I make a fool out of myself in that video, but it's great for your entertainment. I'll make sure to link it here for you. I think it's called something like Plant Room Makeover Part 2 or something like that. And then I didn't install my grow lights in that video because I didn't have them yet. I do have a tutorial, however, on how I installed these grow lights on my Instagram. It's in the highlight bubble called Grow Lights. They work really well. They are really strong, but the issue I have with these grow lights, well, I have a couple issues with them. The first issue is that the cord management issue is so ugly. So ugly. I hate it so much. But honestly, it's whatever for now. I need my plants to like survive through the winter first before I can look into other options. And the second gripe I have with them is that they're really strong. And so the spacing between these shelves is 13 inches, which is like fairly normal for like standard shelving. And if your plants get too tall, then they can get a little bit of sunburning from these grow lights. But otherwise they're actually pretty good, especially if you have like shorter plants or you have shelves with bigger spacing between them. I usually have these strip lights linked in my description box. I'll make sure when I upload this video to put them down there for you. Alright, so that's enough of a precursor. Let's hop into today's video. Today's video is L is for Ludisia Discolor. I just realized that I was spelling this, like the name of this plant, incorrectly for like a long time. I kept adding an extra C in there, but no, it's Ludisia. There's no C. This is a jewel orchid, so it is an orchid like, you know, the normal orchid that you think of. However, this is a terrestrial orchid, so the care for this orchid is a little bit different. I don't really know how to take care of like a regular orchid. I only know how to take care of these things. So last year during Plantmas, I actually uploaded a video where I propagated this plant, and it is still one of my most popular videos. Happy to report it is doing well. So this is the section that I propagated last year. And then this is the based section. So this is like the roots I just kept and I cut it into a stump. And then this is all of the new growth. Okay, so let's start first by talking about the substrate that my jewel orchid is in. I think that picking a substrate for a jewel orchid is perhaps the most difficult. So this section is obviously in leca. That's because I rooted it in water first, and when it started to root, I moved it to moss for a while, and then someone suggested I actually put it in leca because their jewel orchid was doing really, really well in leca. So I thought, why not? Let's give it a go. And so I placed it into leca, and I think it's doing really, really well. I think this might be the jewel orchid that is doing the best out of all of them that I have. So I really, really like putting my jewel orchids in leca. I was kind of worried because with leca, you are feeding your plants nutrients quite frequently, and I don't think that people normally fertilize their jewel orchids this often. I don't change anything for this jewel orchid. I do my complete exact leca routine with this plant as I do with all of my other plants, and so far it seems to be working. The roots on this jewel orchid though, however, are like very short, and they haven't grown a ton at all in like the past year. It's pumping out a lot of foliage recently, so I don't think that the plant needs a whole lot of roots to sustain itself, but it's just kind of interesting that I was worried because the roots were taking so long to come in, but now it's been a year. There's barely any roots, so you can see like one there and like one there, but it's pumping out new leaves like constantly, and the new growth is about to reach the size of the leaves before I cut it, so I don't know. So leca is definitely, I would say, my favorite option at the moment for this jewel orchid. Okay, so this is my other section of Ludisia Discolor. This one is in soil. It's just my usual soil mixture, so it's coco coir, pumice, and horticultural charcoal. There's actually no orchid bark in here. I don't think I put any orchid bark in here, and I don't think it would be necessary to put orchid bark in here. But yeah, and then it is top dressed with sphagnum moss, and the sphagnum moss is just there to help keep the soil a little bit more moist and to raise the humidity a little bit. It doesn't actually like raise the humidity, it just more so keeps the soil from drying out so quickly, and because jewel orchids are humidity lovers, it's kind of important to, if you're not going to give it a lot of extra humidity, then to at least keep it well watered. I think this is my least favorite substrate option. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I just feel like it's not my favorite, and it's a little bit difficult to figure out when to water this plant, just because remember how like the roots of the root system on the jewel orchid is quite small, and so it's a little bit difficult to figure out how long I've waited enough before watering, because I don't want to let it dry out like thoroughly 100% all the way, but I also don't want to water it plant too frequently and cause a root rot issue. So yeah, I feel like this one is just a little bit more difficult to tell when it needs to be watered versus the leca. I really just water it whenever I water it, and the roots will just absorb whatever it needs. And then the other substrate option, which I don't have this jewel orchid in, but I do have my Mesotes petola in, which is also tomorrow's video. I have that one in just, well, now it's in probably like 90% sphagnum moss and like 10% perlite, but it used to be in 100% sphagnum moss. I think that's also a great substrate option for jewel orchids. I think that they can live in sphagnum moss permanently. I don't really think there's a need to change them to another option after you root them. And I actually think that the sphagnum moss is a really good option. Okay, so now that we've talked about substrate option, let's talk about humidity. I think humidity is like probably the second most important factor with jewel orchids. I don't think that jewel orchids needs to be in a terrarium. I feel like that is the most popular way I see them. Like they're often scaped into these really, really cool terrariums, which, you know, definitely nothing wrong with that. Like they definitely thrive in that environment, but I don't think that I don't think it's like a must. So far, this and this, they're both just an ambient room humidity, which is like 50%. My other jewel orchid, there's a cloche over it. I do it because it adds humidity and it grows faster that way, but I don't think that it needs a cloche, and I don't think it like needs like 90% humidity or anything like that. But humidity does help. Humidity is good if you want this plant to grow a little bit quicker, and I think that if you don't give it humidity, you have to make sure that you don't let your jewel orchids dry out too too much. Like, you don't really want it to get like bone dry like you do with like aeroids. So you do want to keep up with watering if you're not going to give it a lot of extra humidity. I just feel like terrariums are beautiful, but they are like a whole nother beast in and of itself, and there's a lot to learn about making terrariums so that they are not only pretty but like structurally sound, and also like doesn't just get like moldy and gross everywhere. So I don't really want to fall down that rabbit hole just yet. So I don't have anything in a terrarium at the moment, but if you do already have a terrarium, jewel orchids are a great option to add in your scaped terrariums. Okay, now let's talk about lighting. So with your jewel orchids, you want to make sure that they are not in direct lighting. If you put your jewel orchid in a light that is too strong, it is going to completely bleach the leaves and they're going to look very, very sad. Honestly, I have my Mesodis petola under this grow light, but I also do think it's kind of strong for it. So this section of the Ludisia Discolor is just in my east facing window, gets natural light. I think it is perfectly happy there. And then this section of the Mesodis, of the Ludisia Discolor is in my DIY grow box. I do have a video on that. I'll link it here or in the description box. The grow light in that box is not very strong, and I also keep it at around 50% like brightness, so it's really not that strong at all. But the grow light in that grow box is kept on the majority of the day. It's pretty much like turned on as soon as somebody in the house wakes up, and it gets turned off when I go to bed, which is like very late at night, like 2 or 3 a.m. Sometimes even later. So it's on more often than it's off, so that's why it's at kind of like a lower intensity. So far, haven't experienced any leaf bleaching with having this plant in that grow box, so I'm happy with that so far. But I did used to have this plant really close to a grow light, and it did get very sun bleached, and it was not cute. And once the plant is bleached, you can't reverse that, so just make sure it's out of direct sunlight. I don't think that these need a whole lot of light. The east facing window that the other section is in is a pretty obstructed east facing window, so it doesn't even get like as much light as a usual east facing window when you think of one. And it seems fine. So I'm not going to go over propagation in this video because I already have a whole other video on that you can definitely check out. They are fairly easy to propagate. They just take a really long time to start growing roots. So don't stress too much about your plant if it seems like it's doing nothing for a really long time. Mine didn't really do anything for like over 6 months. I do have a highlight bubble on my Instagram called Jewel Orchid, and I show like the root progression of that plant, and just to show you like exactly how slow it took for my plant to root. So I recommend you check that out as well. Okay, I think that is all I had to say about this plant. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you like it, give me a thumbs up, subscribe, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye!